The October wind whispered through Thunder Valley as Mason conducted his dawn security sweep, his boots leaving precise impressions in the morning frost. Each step followed a carefully planned route that provided optimal viewing angles of his property's key approaches. To casual observers, he appeared to be just another rancher checking his fences. But Mason's eyes moved with the calculated precision of someone who had spent years learning to read terrain, identify patterns, and eliminate threats from distances that most marksmen considered impossible. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 3 years of running the ranch alone had taught Mason to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. Every ridgeline provided potential firing positions. Each natural drainage route could channel movement. The network of cattle paths he'd carefully maintained created clear fields of fire while appearing completely natural. These morning walks served multiple purposes. Checking cattle and fences, yes, but also maintaining the mental map he'd built of his property's defensive features. His attention shifted to movement along the northern ridge, where the Anderson brothers were already moving their cattle to fresh pasture. Their coordinated efficiency brought a slight smile to his face. When Mason first proposed modernizing the valley's ranching operations 2 years ago, many had dismissed his ideas as a newcomer's naive attempt to save his inheritance. Now, the sight of neighboring properties working in harmony was so common that few remembered it had been his innovation. "Morning, Mason," Emma Crawford's voice carried clearly across the pasture. The young veterinarian's truck kicked up dust as it approached along the access road. What had started as routine animal care visits had evolved into a valuable partnership. Emma's work took her to every ranch in the valley, making her an ideal source of information about regional activities. "How are the new security cameras working?" "Out?" Emma asked, climbing down from her truck. Her casual tone belied the real purpose of her early visit. They'd developed a habit of sharing observations during these morning meetings, building a picture of the valley's changing dynamics. "Coverage is solid," Mason replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had gradually replaced his initial uncertainty about ranching. "Though we've got tracks again at the North Creek crossing. 4 sets heading east, not our usual traffic patterns." Emma's expression tightened slightly. She'd been hearing similar reports from other ranches. "Strangers passed through Wilson place yesterday. City clothes, expensive trucks, asked a lot of questions about property values." Mason nodded, processing this information against other subtle changes he'd noticed. The valley was changing, and not just in the ways visible on the surface. "How's Jack Wilson handling it?" "Nervous. Says they were polite enough, but something felt off. Mentioned how isolated some of the properties are, how difficult it must be to maintain security." Emma paused, choosing her next words carefully. They knew details about his mortgage situation that aren't common knowledge. Through the morning mist, Mason watched more ranches coming to life. The coordinated patterns of activity he'd helped establish were more than just efficient ranching practices. They'd created an early warning system, a network of observers who understood that their mutual survival depended on working together. He'd rebuilt his father's failing ranch by helping others modernize theirs, turning individual struggles into collective strength. The sound of approaching vehicles drew their attention. 2 black SUVs moved along the main valley road, their pace deliberately slow. Even at this distance, Mason could tell these weren't local vehicles. The way they moved, stopping at key vantage points, suggested they were cataloging the landscape. "Third time this week," Emma noted quietly. "Always the same pattern. They're mapping the valley." Mason's hand tightened imperceptibly on his coffee thermos, remembering similar patterns he'd observed in combat zones. Before deploying scout snipers, his teams would conduct methodical terrain analysis, identifying optimal firing positions, likely movement routes, and key infrastructure. He'd learned more about reading hostile intent from those missions than he'd ever expected to use back home. Sheriff Reeves's patrol car kicked up dust as it approached, right on schedule. The new sheriff had maintained regular checks of outlying properties since reports of unusual activity had increased along the state border. Mason appreciated his diligence, even if his tactical awareness needed work. He always parked in the same spot, followed the same routes, creating patterns any observer could track. "Morning, folks," Reeves called out, accepting the coffee Mason offered. "Quiet night?" "4 sets of tracks at the North Crossing," Mason reported. "Professional. Stride-length urban footwear passed through around 200 based on dew patterns." The sheriff's eyebrows rose slightly at the precision of his assessment, but he'd learned not to question it. Mason had earned a reputation for attention to detail that went beyond normal ranching concerns. If he'd also helped organize informal neighborhood watches and communications networks, well, that was just good community building. "Getting similar reports all along the valley," Reeves admitted, his voice carrying genuine concern. "Started with the properties near the state line, strangers asking questions, making offers to buy land. Subtle pressure at first, but it's changing. 2 ranches report late-night visitors this week. Nothing taken, but fences cut, equipment damaged." Mason's mind processed this information, recognizing patterns he'd seen developing over months. The valley's transformation from struggling individual ranches into a coordinated agricultural community had attracted attention. Their success made them a target. "The Williams place got visited last night," Emma added. "Men in expensive suits, very polite. Mentioned how their insurance might not cover certain types of accidents, how isolation can make properties vulnerable." Mason knew the Williams family well. Their operation was crucial to the valley's cattle industry. Any pressure on them would ripple through the entire community. But the visitors had made a crucial miscalculation. They saw isolation as vulnerability, not recognizing how he'd spent years transforming that perceived weakness into strength. Through the dissolving morning mist, Mason watched more ranchers beginning their day's work. To casual observers, they were simply tending their herds, but his careful coordination had built layers of cooperation that went beyond agriculture. Every synchronized ranching operation provided coverage for neighboring properties. Each shared equipment arrangement created natural observation posts. The community's innocent appearance masked sophisticated networks of mutual support. "Sheriff," Reeves finished his coffee, his expression troubled. "I'll increase patrols, but county resources are stretched thin. Got similar reports from 3 other valleys. Same pattern. Organized pressure on isolated communities." "We'll keep watch," Mason assured him, his voice steady. What he didn't tell him was how he'd spent the past 3 years preparing for exactly this possibility. Every improvement project he'd coordinated had dual purposes. Every piece of shared equipment was positioned with multiple uses in mind. The valley's productive harmony concealed layers of readiness that would have impressed his former commanding officers. Because Mason Reynolds hadn't spent 3 years just learning to run a ranch, he'd applied the skills that once made him a legendary scout sniper, reading terrain, predicting movement patterns, and most importantly, understanding that the most dangerous force isn't the one making obvious threats. It's the one patiently waiting for the perfect moment to reveal capabilities that its enemies never suspected existed. As the morning progressed, Mason made his way to the converted barn he'd transformed into a workshop. To others, it appeared to be a simple maintenance facility. In reality, he'd carefully modified it to serve as a command center with clear sight lines across multiple properties. Inside, he methodically cleaned his custom-built Macmillan TAC-338 rifle, a task that to most would seem like simple maintenance of high-end hunting equipment. Tyler Chen, their neighboring cattle rancher, pulled up in his weathered pickup. The former Air Force combat controller, had moved to the valley 3 years ago, bringing tactical expertise that had proven invaluable in modernizing their security systems. "Those strangers passed by my east pasture again," he reported, settling onto a workbench. "Third time this week. They're mapping every access road, every water source, every elevated position." Mason's hands never paused in their methodical work, but his mind processed this information against the valley's broader patterns. "They're building a comprehensive picture," he noted quietly, "not just of our physical layout, but our routines, our resources, our vulnerabilities." Through the workshop's carefully positioned windows, he observed two more black SUVs moving along. Distant roads. Their patterns had shifted from observation to active testing, probing response times, checking security measures, identifying key infrastructure. "They're professional," he added, noting their systematic approach. "This isn't random criminal activity. Old Bill Thompson called," Tyler continued, his expression troubled. "He's thinking of selling, got an offer that seems too good to be true, especially with the drought these past years." He paused, watching Mason's reaction. "Mentioned some pressure too, subtle stuff, but his equipment's been acting up. Strange mechanical failures." Mason absorbed this news, understanding its implications. The Thompson property controlled key water rights that affected the entire valley's ranching operations. Its sale would disrupt the cooperative system he'd carefully built. "Did he mention who made the offer?" "Company called Blackstone Development. Very corporate, very professional. Talking about agricultural investment opportunities and modernization initiatives." Tyler's military background had taught him to be skeptical of smooth corporate speech. "Did some digging. They've got a pattern. Buy one key property in an area, use it to pressure others. 3 valleys over, they own half the water rights now." Mason moved to the workshop's south window, using his high-powered spotting scope to track the SUV's movement. Their positioning suggested military or law enforcement background, professional surveillance techniques that most wouldn't notice. "They're not developers," he stated quietly. "They're a front. The Shadow Creek gang has been moving up from the south, taking control of rural areas through exactly this pattern." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Tyler tensed at the name. The Shadow Creek gang had a reputation for transforming peaceful ranching communities into bases for various illegal operations. Their method was systematic: acquire key properties, disrupt local cooperation, isolate resistant ranchers until selling became the only option. "What's our play here?" Mason allowed himself a small smile, appreciating how naturally Tyler had said, "our." The valley's transformation into a cooperative community hadn't just been about agricultural efficiency. He'd spent 3 years building something stronger. A network of people who understood that true security comes from standing together. "For now, we watch," he replied, mind already calculating possibilities. "They expect panic, individual reactions. That's their standard playbook. Isolate, pressure, divide. They're not prepared for a community that moves as one." Emma's truck was approaching again, moving faster than usual. Through his spotting scope, Mason noted how the veterinarian's normally relaxed driving had been replaced by focused purpose. Something had changed. "They hit Miller's place last night," she reported without preamble, entering the workshop. "Broke. The main irrigation pump. Very professional job. Knew exactly where to hit to disable the system without appearing obviously criminal. Insurance will call it equipment failure. The Millers ran the valley's largest feedlot operation. Disrupting their ability to maintain proper water pressure put thousands of cattle at risk. The Shadow Creek gang was escalating, moving from surveillance to active pressure." Mason shared a look with Tyler and Emma, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. These outsiders saw what they expected to see: isolated ranchers, vulnerable individuals, easy targets for systematic pressure. They had no idea they were facing a community that had spent years preparing for exactly this kind of threat. The first clear evidence of the Shadow Creek gang's growing influence arrived at dawn 3 days later. Mason discovered unauthorized modifications to the valley's main access road overnight. Fresh gravel laid down, drainage improved, surface graded. To most, it would appear as helpful infrastructure maintenance. His military training in pattern recognition told him differently. They were preparing routes for heavy vehicle traffic. Professional work, Tyler Chen observed, crouching to examine the road surface. Commercial-grade materials, proper compaction. These weren't local contractors. His weathered face creased with concern. They're building for something big. Mason surveyed the valley's morning activity through his spotting scope, noting how the improved road altered established patterns. Ranch trucks that normally use secondary routes were naturally gravitating to the smoother surface, inadvertently creating predictable traffic flows that would be easier to monitor. Found something else, Tyler continued, leading him to where the new road surface met their northern field access. Look at the culvert placement. They've channeled all drainage through monitored points. Anyone trying to move off-road will leave. Traces they can track. The systematic nature of these modifications confirmed Mason's suspicions. The Shadow Creek gang wasn't just criminal opportunists. They employed professionals with infrastructure expertise, people who understood how to reshape terrain for tactical advantage through seemingly beneficial improvements. They were slowly transforming the valley's geography to serve their purposes. Emma's truck approached from the direction of the Wilson property, her normal morning rounds now serving as intelligence gathering. The veterinarian's expression was grim as she parked. They've started improving the bridge at Wilson's Creek, brought in a whole engineering crew at dawn, said the county approved emergency repairs. But Jack Wilson never filed any maintenance requests. They're establishing choke points, Mason noted, mind calculating how these changes affected movement through the valley, creating places where they can control access if needed. These aren't random improvements. The distant sound of heavy machinery drew their attention. Through morning haze, they could see construction equipment moving near the Thompson property. Old Bill had been the first to accept Blackstone's offers, and now his land was being systematically altered. They're reshaping the entire drainage system, Tyler observed, professional knowledge evident in his analysis. Those new retention ponds aren't just for irrigation. They're placing them to control water flow to downstream properties. Mason's fingers traced the worn grip of his spotting scope, mind-mapping how these changes connected. The Shadow Creek gang was implementing a sophisticated strategy, using legitimate construction projects to establish infrastructure control. Each improvement appeared beneficial while serving hidden tactical purposes. Marcus Walsh, the local high school's former Army EOD tech-turned-physics teacher, arrived with fresh insights. His explosive ordnance disposal experience had given him an eye for spotting carefully concealed threats. They've installed new cell repeaters, he reported, his tablet displaying coverage maps. Much stronger signal now, but all traffic routes. Through their own equipment, they're creating a monitored communications grid. Sheriff Reeves's patrol car approached, his normally relaxed demeanor replaced by focused concern. Got word from the county assessor's office, he announced after parking. Blackstone Development has filed permits for major infrastructure projects across the valley. Everything looks legitimate. Road improvements, bridge repairs, communications upgrades. They've got all the proper paperwork. Too proper, Mason responded, recognizing patterns from his military operations. Every permit filed simultaneously, all applications perfect. That's not normal bureaucracy. They've got someone inside the system. The sheriff nodded grimly. Checked with contacts in other jurisdictions. Same pattern in 3 other valleys. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, they've established legal control over key infrastructure. Makes resistance much harder. Through his spotting scope, Mason tracked more construction vehicles moving along the improved road. Their positioning and timing suggested careful coordination. This wasn't just construction work. It was systematic terrain modification by people with military or law enforcement background. "They're creating a net," he explained, sharing his observations. "Each improvement looks beneficial, but together they're establishing infrastructure control. Roads channel movement, water systems create dependence, communications grids enable monitoring. They're reshaping the valley to serve their purposes." Mason's radio crackled with a transmission from the Wilson property. "Need some help at the South Pasture." Jack Wilson's voice carried tension beneath casual words. "Got some cattle acting strange near the new construction." "That's the third emergency call from properties near construction sites," Emma noted. "Preparing to leave. They're using the work to disrupt normal ranch operations, force people to change established patterns." Mason watched his friend drive off, appreciating how their informal intelligence network was adapting. Emma's veterinary rounds now included documenting construction activities, tracking pattern changes, gathering information about the Shadow Creek Gang's methodical expansion. By mid-morning, more concerning signals emerged. Marcus identified unusual electronic signatures around the valley's perimeter, sophisticated monitoring equipment being installed under the guise of agricultural sensors. Tyler discovered survey markers indicating plans for more road improvements that would further channel movement through controlled points. "Remember that cell tower maintenance crew last week?" Marcus asked, showing Mason data on his tablet. "They didn't just upgrade equipment. They installed directional antennas, coverage specifically shaped to monitor key areas. These aren't standard telecommunications patterns." The gang's strategy was becoming clear. Use legitimate improvements to establish systematic control over the valley's infrastructure. Each project appeared beneficial while serving hidden purposes. Road improvements channeled movement through monitored points. Water system modifications created leverage over downstream properties. Communications upgrades established surveillance capabilities. Construction activities disrupted normal patterns, forced operational changes. Through his spotting scope, Mason observed another construction crew arriving at the Thompson property. Their equipment was too new, their operations too precise for normal contractors. These were professionals using construction workers' cover for systematic terrain modification. "They're following a playbook," he explained to the gathered observers. "Each improvement serves multiple purposes. Roads control movement, water systems create dependence, communications enable monitoring. They're reshaping the valley's infrastructure to serve their eventual takeover." Tyler nodded, adding his expertise. "These aren't random projects. Everything's connected. Drainage feeds, monitored points, roads channel traffic past observation posts, construction sites double as surveillance. Positions, they're building a system." Sheriff Reeves's expression was grim. "County resources are limited. Even if we could prove these improvements aren't legitimate, they've got all the legal paperwork. They're using the system against us." Mason allowed himself a small smile, remembering lessons from his scout sniper days about dealing with sophisticated criminal operations. They're professional, methodical, following established patterns. That makes them predictable to anyone who understands their methods. Through the morning haze, he watched more construction vehicles moving into position. The Shadow Creek Gang was implementing a sophisticated strategy, but their very expertise revealed their assumptions. They saw the valley's scattered ranches as isolated targets, not realizing that apparent separation concealed carefully prepared cooperation. "They think infrastructure control guarantees victory," he observed quietly. "They don't understand that. Some communities can't be broken by reshaping their terrain. Real strength isn't in roads or communications grids, it's in people working together, because Mason Reynolds hadn't just spent 3 years learning normal ranching operations. He'd studied how terrain affects movement, how infrastructure enables control, and most importantly, how systematic preparation can transform apparent vulnerability into unexpected strength. While the Shadow Creek gang methodically established their infrastructure net, they never realized they were revealing their own tactical patterns to someone who'd learned to see beyond surface improvements. Rebecca Martinez, whose family ran the valley's largest hay operation, arrived at Mason's workshop with urgent news. They've started installing automated monitoring systems on all major storage facilities, she reported, spreading out technical specifications. Claimed it's for moisture control and inventory tracking, but these systems go way beyond agricultural needs. Marcus examined the documents, his technical background allowing him to decode the true capabilities. These are military-grade monitoring platforms, he confirmed. Motion detection, thermal imaging, automated data collection. They could track every hay shipment, monitor all personnel movements, create detailed patterns of operational activity. Mason processed this information against his growing understanding of the Shadow Creek gang's methodology. Control of the hay storage would give them leverage over the entire valley's livestock operations. By monitoring storage and shipping, they could identify every rancher's economic patterns, plan targeted pressure on vulnerable operations. There's more, Rebecca continued. They're offering modernization partnerships to key facilities, premium rates for storage, priority shipping, guaranteed contracts. But the agreements include clauses about infrastructure compliance and operational integration. They're creating a tiered system, Tyler analyzed, his military background helping decode the legal language. Properties that accept their improvements get preferential treatment. Those who resist face increasing operational challenges. Classic infrastructure-based coercion. Through carefully positioned observation points, Mason noted increased nighttime activity around improved properties, professional security teams conducting systematic patrols, sophisticated equipment being installed under cover of darkness, specialized vehicles moving along established routes. The construction teams switch out at night, Marcus observed, his EOD experience evident. Day crews do visible improvements, but the night teams install the real infrastructure, different equipment, different personnel, much higher operational security. Linda Whitaker, who managed the local ranch supply cooperative, arrived with additional insights. They're establishing control over equipment and parts distribution, she reported. New suppliers offering better prices, faster delivery, but only through their approved channels. Independent vendors are facing mysterious shipping delays, inventory problems. Mason recognized another layer of the Shadow Creek gang's strategy. By controlling essential supplies while offering preferential access to cooperative properties, they were creating practical pressure on resistant ranchers. Each improvement to the supply chain increased their influence over daily operations. Check the routing protocols, Marcus suggested, examining Linda's shipping documentation. These aren't normal agricultural supply chains. They're implementing military-style logistics tracking, establishing total monitoring of material movement through the valley. A brief radio transmission from Tyler confirmed their expanding influence. New construction crew arrived at the North Bridge, he reported. Different equipment than the day teams. They're installing something under the roadbed, while establishing safety perimeters to keep people away. Emma's veterinary rounds had documented another pattern. Properties accepting Blackstone's improvements suddenly reported fewer equipment problems, better herd health, smoother operations. Those resisting faced increasing technical difficulties that their original repair network struggled to resolve. They're demonstrating the benefits of cooperation, Mason explained to the gathered observers. Each success story pressures others to accept their system. But they're really showing us their methods, how they use infrastructure improvement to establish operational control. The night's activities revealed the sophisticated nature of their opposition. The Shadow Creek gang wasn't simple criminals. They employed professionals with military, engineering, and technical expertise. Their methodology demonstrated careful planning, systematic implementation, and deep understanding of infrastructure-based control. But their very sophistication made them predictable to informed observation. While they methodically established their control network, they never realized they were revealing their tactical patterns to people who understood that some communities can't be dominated through infrastructure alone. The Thunder Valley Ranchers. Cooperative monthly meeting revealed how deeply the Shadow Creek gang's influence had already penetrated their community. Inside the weathered community hall, typically reserved for livestock auctions and equipment sharing arrangements, tension hung thick as morning fog. 50 ranching families, their lives intertwined through generations of shared struggle and success, faced the first real test of their unity. Thompson's property wasn't just sold, Laura Anderson declared, the elderly matriarch's voice carrying decades of valley history. It was surgically removed from our community. His water rights, equipment sharing agreements, grazing partnerships, all dissolved overnight. They didn't just buy land, they dismantled relationships. Mason observed the gathered faces from his position near the back wall, noting how the room had subtly divided. Those who'd accepted Blackstone's initial improvements sat together. Their expressions a mix of defensive justification and growing unease. Others who'd resisted clustered in small groups, sharing whispered concerns about mysterious equipment failures and unexplained shipping delays. Nathan Foster, the local bank's agricultural loan officer, stood to share his perspective. "The financial pressure is mounting," he explained, spreading documents across the podium. "Properties that accept Blackstone's modernization program suddenly find their credit terms improving. Those who don't face increasing scrutiny from regional lenders, someone's manipulating our financial infrastructure." The implications rippled through the room. The valley's ranching operations depended on seasonal loans, equipment financing, and flexible credit arrangements. By influencing regional banking, the Shadow Creek gang was establishing another layer of control over resistant properties. "It's not just financing," Diana Martinez added, her position as the high school's agriculture teacher providing unique insight. "The next generation's being targeted. Blackstone is offering agricultural technology scholarships to students from cooperative ranches, premium internships, guaranteed job placement, but only if their families are participating partners in valley development." Mason's mind catalogued how this new information fit the Shadow Creek gang's broader strategy. They weren't just buying land and infrastructure. They were systematically dismantling the community's social fabric, replacing natural relationships with controlled dependencies. Grace Henderson rose next, her family's fourth-generation cattle operation carrying significant influence. "We need to understand what's really at stake," she began, voice steady despite clear concern. "Yesterday I received their final partnership offer for our feedlot. The terms looked excellent on paper, guaranteed volume commitments, premium rates, priority access. But buried in the contract details was a clause about operational integration with their broader agricultural network." "They're not trying to buy our businesses," Tyler interjected, his combat experience helping decode their methodology. "They're building a connected system where every operation depends on their infrastructure. Accept their improvements, you become part of their network. Resist, you get isolated from essential services." Through the hall's windows, Mason watched more construction vehicles moving along the improved roads. The Shadow Creek gang's physical transformation of the valley continued while they methodically established control over its social and economic relationships, Samuel Richardson, whose family's mechanical repair shop had served the valley for 3 generations, shared another warning. They've started upgrading key repair facilities with their own equipment, specialized diagnostic tools, proprietary parts supply chains. Independent shops are losing access to critical components. They're turning basic maintenance into another control point. The discussion shifted to immediate concerns. Several families reported pressure on their children, subtle suggestions that future opportunities depended on their parents' cooperation. Others described how long-standing community arrangements were being disrupted by new regulations and requirement changes. The Wilsons' dairy operation is at a breaking point, Emma reported, her veterinary work providing a clear view of mounting pressures. Their independent milk hauler's license got suspended over documentation irregularities. Blackstone's transportation network offered to take over their routes at premium rates, but only if they upgrade to approved equipment standards. Mason moved to the front of the room, years of quiet leadership drawing attention without demanding it. "We're facing something beyond simple criminal takeover," he explained, voice carrying calm authority. "They're not just buying assets or establishing infrastructure. They're systematically reorganizing how our community functions." Through the hall's strategic observation points, he noted increased surveillance activity around their gathering. The Shadow Creek gang was monitoring community meetings, analyzing resistance patterns, and identifying pressure points in social networks. "Look at their pattern," he continued, "mind-connecting elements others might miss. Each improvement seems beneficial in isolation. Better roads, upgraded storage, modern equipment, financing options. But together they're creating a system of controlled dependencies. They're not just taking over our valley, they're transforming how it operates." Marcus added his technical perspective. "Their infrastructure isn't just physical. They're establishing digital control points throughout the valley, equipment that only works with their systems, data that only flows through their networks, communications that depend on their upgrades. They're building a technological cage around our operations." The afternoon session revealed deeper community divisions. Families facing immediate financial pressure described impossible choices between accepting Shadow Creek Gang's help or losing generations of agricultural heritage. Others reported subtle warnings about children's educational opportunities, medical access, and essential services. "The Preston family situation is critical," Linda reported, her position at the Ranch Supply Cooperative providing a clear view of economic pressures. Their equipment financing got called early over regulatory compliance issues. Blackstone offered immediate refinancing if they accept complete operational integration into their agricultural network. Mason recognized how each example demonstrated the Shadow Creek Gang's sophisticated strategy. They weren't using obvious criminal pressure. They were systematically exploiting modern ranching's complex dependencies. Every improvement carried hidden costs in community relationships and operational independence. Rebecca analyzed broader patterns. "They're creating tiered access to essential services," she explained, engineering background helping decode their methodology. "Properties that accept their system get preferential treatment. Better shipping rates, faster repairs, priority processing. Those who resist face increasing obstacles in basic operations." Through carefully positioned observers, Mason monitored unusual activity around the community hall. The Shadow Creek Gang's surveillance teams maintained professional distance while gathering intelligence about community response and resistance patterns. "We're not just fighting for our ranches," he addressed the gathered families. "We're defending something deeper, our ability to operate independently, to maintain community relationships, to preserve agricultural heritage that can't be measured in modern efficiency standards." Tyler's arrival added urgent context. They've started establishing checkpoints on improved roads, he reported, calling it agricultural quality control, inspecting shipments, verifying documentation, monitoring movement patterns. But they're really mapping our operational networks, identifying community connections they need to control. The evening session focused on immediate challenges. Families reported increasing pressure through sophisticated methods. Children's educational opportunities tied to parents' cooperation, medical services becoming dependent on approved insurance networks, essential repairs requiring authorized providers, financial services linked to operational compliance, transportation access controlled through infrastructure improvements. Mason absorbed each report, recognizing how the Shadow Creek Gang's strategy targeted modern ranching's complex interdependencies. They weren't using obvious criminal tactics. They were systematically exploiting legitimate pressures to dismantle community resistance, but their very sophistication revealed assumptions about rural communities. While they methodically established control through modern dependencies, they never realized they were showing their playbook to people who understood that some relationships can't be controlled through infrastructure and economic pressure. Because Mason Reynolds had learned that true community strength isn't measured in modern efficiency or operational integration. While the Shadow Creek Gang deployed sophisticated systems and professional expertise, they never realized they were revealing their methods to someone who'd learned that lasting power grows from understanding how communities resist systematic dismantling of their essential relationships. Julia Hawthorne, who managed the local healthcare clinic, shared disturbing developments. They've started acquiring regional medical facilities, she reported, implementing modernized insurance networks that prioritize service for compliant ranching operations. Families resisting their agricultural programs suddenly face longer wait times, restricted specialist access, and complicated approval processes. The healthcare manipulation struck deep at community vulnerabilities. Modern ranching's physical demands made medical access essential. Another pressure point the Shadow Creek Gang was expertly exploiting. The school board received an interesting proposal today, Elizabeth Connor added, her position as district superintendent providing crucial insight. Blackstone is offering to fund a complete technology upgrade for our agricultural education program. State-of-the-art equipment, advanced training systems, direct connections to their operational network. But the terms require student data integration and curriculum alignment with their agricultural development standards. Mason recognized another facet of their strategy. By controlling educational resources, they could influence the next generation's understanding of ranching operations, subtly reshaping community values to match their systematic approach. Pastor David Wright, whose congregation included most Valley families, observed deeper impacts. They're not just dividing our community physically, he noted. These pressures are straining relationships built over generations. Families who've helped each other through countless hardships now face impossible choices between community loyalty and operational survival. Through the hall's windows, Mason watched the sun setting behind distant mountains. The valley's natural beauty remained unchanged, but its social landscape was being systematically transformed. The Shadow Creek Gang wasn't just establishing infrastructure control, they were rewiring the community's essential connections. The Chamber of Commerce meeting was enlightening, Margaret Foster reported, her business consulting work providing a unique perspective. Blackstone presented their regional development initiative, tax incentives, infrastructure investments, economic growth projections. But participating businesses must integrate with their operational network, accept their monitoring systems, and follow their compliance standards. The evening's discussion revealed how the Shadow Creek Gang's influence extended beyond agriculture. local businesses, service providers, and support industries faced increasing pressure to align with their systematic approach. Each sector's transformation created new leverage over resistant ranching operations. James Harrison, whose construction company had served the valley for decades, described mounting challenges. They're implementing standardized building requirements for agricultural facilities, he explained. Properties using independent contractors face permit delays, inspection complications, material supply issues. They're turning basic infrastructure maintenance into another control point. Mason absorbed these reports, understanding how each element supported the Shadow Creek Gang's broader strategy. They weren't just pressuring individual ranches, they were systematically reshaping the community's entire support structure, creating a network of controlled dependencies that would make resistance increasingly difficult. We're seeing similar patterns in veterinary services, Emma added. New regulations requiring approved diagnostic equipment, medication supplies restricted to authorized providers, treatment protocols tied to their monitoring systems. They're transforming independent animal care into another leverage point. Through carefully positioned observers, Mason monitored increased surveillance activity as darkness fell. The Shadow Creek Gang's professional teams maintained systematic coverage of community gatherings, analyzing resistance patterns and identifying pressure points in social networks. The night's final discussions focused on immediate challenges. Families described how the Shadow Creek Gang's influence affected every aspect of daily operations. Equipment repairs requiring authorized technicians with proprietary diagnostic tools, crop insurance tied to compliance with their agricultural standards, transportation services restricted by infrastructure safety requirements, supply deliveries delayed by documentation and inspection protocols, essential services increasingly dependent on their operational network. Hannah Parker, the local librarian, revealed another dimension of their influence. They're digitizing our agricultural records, she explained, voice tight with concern, offering to preserve and modernize generations of farming documentation. But the terms require all data to be integrated into their information network, with access controlled through their authorization systems. Mason recognized the strategic importance of this move. The library's archives contained detailed records of water rights, land use patterns, and community relationships, crucial information for understanding the valley's agricultural dynamics. The Youth 4-H program received an interesting proposal, Amy Richardson added, her leadership of local agricultural education programs providing valuable insight. Blackstone wants to modernize our training approach. New equipment, advanced facilities, direct mentorship opportunities, but only for students whose families participate in their development initiatives. The manipulation of youth programs struck at the community's future. By controlling agricultural education, the Shadow Creek Gang could shape how the next generation viewed ranching operations and community relationships. Nathan Brooks, managing the local farmers market, described subtle pressure on independent producers. They're implementing new quality control standards for market vendors, he reported. Properties using their approved methods get premium locations, marketing support, and distribution advantages. Independent operators face increasing restrictions and compliance requirements. Through strategic observation points, Mason noted how the Shadow Creek Gang's surveillance teams had adapted to community patterns. Their professional operators maintained systematic coverage while appearing to be routine agricultural consultants or development representatives. The credit union board meeting was revealing, Michael Foster continued, expanding on his earlier financial insights. Blackstone's banking partners are restructuring agricultural lending policies. Properties integrated with their network receive preferential terms, expedited processing, and flexible payment options. Independent operators face stricter requirements and limited access to seasonal financing. Dr. Emily Turner, the Valley's primary care physician, shared healthcare implications. "They're not just acquiring medical facilities," she explained. "They're establishing a tiered service system. Families participating in their agricultural program receive priority appointments, expanded coverage, direct access to specialists. Others face increasing barriers to basic care." Dawn painted Thunder Valley in shades of copper as Mason began implementing his initial response to the Shadow Creek Gang's systematic takeover attempt. His converted workshop, appearing abandoned to casual observation, had become a strategic planning center. Maps spread across weathered workbenches detailed the valley's transformation, each new improvement marked with precision. "Their surveillance pattern suggests private military contractors," Tyler noted, analyzing signal data on his specialized equipment. "These aren't standard criminals. They're following established protocols for territorial acquisition. Look at how they've positioned their monitoring systems, overlapping coverage, redundant power supplies, hardened communication links." Mason studied the technical readouts, remembering lessons from his sniper training about professional security operations. "They're establishing what they think is perfect surveillance," he observed, "but their very expertise makes them predictable to anyone who understands their methods." Through carefully concealed observation points, he tracked their morning activities. Construction teams resumed their systematic improvements, while surveillance units maintained professional coverage of key areas. Their operations revealed military-grade training, but also showed assumptions about rural communities that could be exploited. Marcus arrived with fresh intelligence gathered during his morning fence check. "They're implementing livestock tracking systems," he reported, spreading technical documents across the planning table. "RFID tags, GPS monitors, automated movement tracking, claiming it's for herd health management, but the data feeds directly to their control center." Rebecca's engineering analysis revealed infrastructure vulnerabilities. "Their power grid upgrades have a critical weakness," she explained, pointing to technical schematics. "They're routing everything through centralized control nodes, efficient for monitoring, yes, but it creates potential failure points they don't expect us to recognize." The morning strategy session focused on identifying the Shadow Creek Gang's tactical assumptions. Their professional expertise was impressive, but it revealed operational patterns that could be anticipated. Regular patrol schedules disguised as security checks, communication protocols hidden within normal agricultural data, surveillance. Positions masked by infrastructure improvements, supply routes established through road upgrades, control points concealed as agricultural facilities. "They're creating digital checkpoints," Marcus added, his software background detecting subtle patterns. "Every improvement includes automated monitoring, traffic sensors, communication nodes, data collection points. But their network architecture assumes no one here understands modern technology." Tom Foster's arrival added crucial insights about power distribution. Those new electrical substations they're building, they're implementing military-grade protection, backup generators, surge suppression, physical security, but they're following standard protocols that assume civilian opposition. Mason absorbed these reports, his mind developing counter-strategies that would exploit the Shadow Creek Gang's professional assumptions. They saw scattered ranches as isolated targets, never suspecting that apparent rural simplicity could mask sophisticated resistance. "The soil sensors they're installing reveal their tactical approach," Tyler observed, his construction experience identifying structural patterns. "They're establishing an underground monitoring grid, vibration detection, moisture tracking, temperature analysis, professional equipment for detecting unusual activity, but they're following textbook deployment patterns." Through his binoculars, Mason observed their teams establishing new observation posts. Their positions demonstrated tactical expertise while revealing operational habits that could be predicted. Each improvement project included sophisticated surveillance but followed protocols designed for urban environments. Their communication network has specific frequencies dedicated to tactical coordination, Marcus reported, monitoring signal patterns. They're using agricultural data transmission as cover for operational commands, professional encryption, but standard military protocols. We can anticipate their movements. The afternoon brought Rachel Martinez's analysis of their educational control attempts. They're implementing specialized agricultural training programs, she explained, modern equipment, advanced techniques, professional instruction. But their teaching methods show military influence, systematic skill development focused on operational efficiency. Mason recognized how each element fit their broader strategy. The Shadow Creek gang wasn't just establishing physical control. Indeed, they were implementing a comprehensive system based on professional military experience. Their expertise was impressive, but revealed tactical patterns to those who understood their methods. Their supply chain monitoring shows similar patterns. Linda added, her cooperative management experience detecting logistical frameworks. They're establishing military-grade inventory tracking, automated systems, real-time monitoring, predictive analytics, but their protocols assume civilian infrastructure. Emma's afternoon rounds provided more tactical insights. Their veterinary supply network follows military medical protocols, she reported. Centralized distribution, inventory control, access restrictions, professional system, but designed for urban environments. Through strategic observation points, Mason monitored their daily operations. Their teams maintained excellent tactical discipline, but showed operational patterns that could be anticipated. Regular shift changes disguised as crew rotations, communication schedules hidden within normal activities, surveillance routes masked. By agricultural operations, supply movement concealed as routine deliveries, control center activities disguised as facility management. Their property acquisition strategy reveals military planning, Michael noted, his banking experience identifying financial patterns. They're establishing control points according to tactical priorities, water access, transportation routes, communication hubs. Professional approach, but following standard protocols. The evening strategy session focused on developing initial responses. Mason's understanding of professional operations helped identify opportunities, natural features that could disrupt surveillance coverage, agricultural activities that could mask counter-movements, community patterns that could conceal coordination, infrastructure elements that could be repurposed, communication methods that could evade monitoring. Marcus's technical analysis revealed digital vulnerabilities. Their network security follows military standards, he explained. Excellent protocols, but designed for urban threats. They don't expect rural communities to understand modern cyber operations. Through carefully positioned observers, Mason tracked their nighttime activities. Their professional teams maintained systematic coverage while revealing operational patterns that could be exploited. Each security measure demonstrated tactical expertise, but showed assumptions about rural capabilities. Their medical supply chain has specific weaknesses, Dr. Turner reported, her healthcare experience identifying systemic vulnerabilities. They're implementing military-grade inventory control, tracked supplies, monitored usage, controlled distribution. Professional system, but designed for standard medical facilities. Mason absorbed these insights, developing strategies that would exploit the Shadow Creek gang's tactical assumptions. They saw scattered ranches as unsophisticated targets, never suspecting that apparent rural simplicity could mask coordinated resistance. because Mason Reynolds had learned that true strategic advantage comes from understanding how professional expertise creates predictable patterns. The Shadow Creek Gang's military training was impressive, but they failed to recognize that some communities can resist systematic control through unconventional methods that transcend standard tactical responses. The night's strategy session revealed additional layers of the Shadow Creek Gang's operational framework. James Harrison's construction expertise identified structural vulnerabilities in their infrastructure improvements. "Look at these foundation plans," he indicated, spreading architectural drawings across the planning table. "They're building hardened facilities disguised as agricultural storage. Military-grade construction, but their designs assume standard civilian opposition." Elizabeth Connor arrived with crucial intelligence about their educational control systems. "The technology they're installing in schools follows military training protocols," she explained. "Advanced simulators, monitored workstations, integrated assessment tools, professional equipment, but their teaching methods reveal tactical patterns." Through thermal imaging equipment borrowed from Marcus's tech cache, Mason observed their nighttime security operations. Their teams maintained excellent tactical discipline while unknowingly demonstrating operational habits that could be anticipated. Their agricultural monitoring system has specific blind spots, Grace Henderson reported, her grain elevator management experience revealing systematic gaps. They're implementing military-grade cargo tracking, automated inventory, real-time monitoring, predictive analytics. Professional system, but designed for standard shipping facilities. Samuel Richardson's mechanical expertise identified vulnerabilities in their equipment control network. "These diagnostic systems follow military maintenance protocols," he noted, analyzing technical specifications, centralized monitoring, tracked repairs, controlled access, excellent setup, but their procedures assume urban infrastructure. The midnight strategy session focused on identifying exploitable patterns in their operations. Security rotations disguised as shift changes, command structure hidden within normal management, surveillance methods masked by agricultural monitoring, supply movements concealed as routine deliveries, control operations disguised as facility maintenance. "Their water management system reveals tactical thinking," Rebecca observed, engineering background detecting military influence. "They're establishing control points at key junctions, automated monitoring, flow control, usage tracking, professional design, but following standard protocols." Pastor Wright's community insights revealed social vulnerabilities in their approach. "Their gathering restrictions follow military crowd control principles," he explained. "Regulated access, monitored activities, controlled movement, systematic approach, but designed for urban populations." Through carefully positioned sensors, Mason tracked their electronic surveillance patterns. The Shadow Creek Gang's professional teams maintained sophisticated coverage while revealing operational assumptions that could be exploited. Communication, schedules hidden in data traffic, movement tracking disguised as agricultural monitoring, surveillance systems masked by infrastructure, control centers concealed as management facilities, supply routes hidden within normal transportation. "Their medical supply network shows military influence," Dr. Turner added, analyzing distribution patterns. "Centralized inventory, tracked usage, controlled access, professional system, but their protocols assume standard healthcare operations." Maria Gonzalez's cultural expertise identified vulnerabilities in their community control methods. "Their event monitoring follows military gathering protocols," she noted. "Regulated activities, tracked attendance, controlled interactions, systematic approach, but designed for urban environments." The pre-dawn planning session revealed additional tactical opportunities, natural features that could disrupt surveillance, agricultural activities that could mask movement, community patterns that could conceal coordination, infrastructure, elements that could be repurposed, communication methods that could evade detection. Hannah Parker's research uncovered historical precedents. Similar operations in other regions followed predictable patterns, she reported. Initial infrastructure control, systematic pressure, coordinated takeover, professional approach, but their methods show consistent vulnerabilities. Through strategic observation points, Mason monitored their dawn security rotation. The Shadow Creek Gang's teams maintained excellent tactical discipline while revealing operational patterns that experienced observation could predict. Regular patrol timing disguised as routine checks, communication protocols hidden in normal traffic, surveillance positions masked by infrastructure, supply movements concealed as standard delivery, command operations disguised as management. Their equipment maintenance system follows military protocols, Tom Foster noted. Electrical, expertise identifying systemic weaknesses, centralized monitoring, tracked repairs, controlled access, professional setup but designed for standard facilities. Amy Richardson's youth program experience revealed vulnerabilities in their next-generation control strategy. Their training methods show military influence, she explained. Systematic skill development, monitored progress, controlled advancement, professional approach, but assuming standard educational frameworks. The morning's final analysis focused on developing unconventional responses, natural community patterns that could mask coordination, agricultural activities that could conceal movement, infrastructure elements that could be adapted, communication methods that could avoid detection, resource distribution that could evade control. Mason absorbed these insights, developing strategies that would exploit the Shadow Creek Gang's professional assumptions. They saw scattered ranches as unsophisticated targets, never suspecting that apparent rural simplicity could mask sophisticated resistance. Because Mason Reynolds had learned that true tactical advantage comes from understanding how military expertise creates exploitable patterns. The Shadow Creek Gang's professional training was impressive, but they failed to recognize that some communities can resist systematic control through unconventional methods that transcend standard operational responses. The first direct confrontation with the Shadow Creek Gang's leadership came at dawn exactly 1 week after their infrastructure analysis was completed. Through the morning mist, Mason observed 3 black Escalades approaching his property, their movement displaying the precise coordination that marked professional security operations. Vehicle configurations indicate private military background. Marcus transmitted through their secured communication network. Lead vehicles carry command personnel, flanking units have tactical teams, standard protection formation assuming civilian environment. From his converted workshop, Mason watched their approach through carefully positioned observation points. The Escalades paused at pre-selected locations, establishing textbook security coverage while appearing to make casual stops. Regional. Director arriving, Emma transmitted from her observation point. Alexander Chase, former Delta Force commander, specializes in territorial acquisition through infrastructure manipulation. A 4th vehicle approached, its arrival timed to appear coincidental while following precise tactical protocols. Chase emerged, his athletic build and alert posture marking him as a professional operator, despite his business attire. His presence changed the security team's behavior. Sharper movements, tighter coordination, enhanced tactical awareness while maintaining civilian appearance. Implementing signal monitoring protocols, Marcus reported through their secure channel. Advanced encryption, directed frequencies, spread spectrum transmission, military-grade communications disguised as agricultural data. The lead Escalade stopped in Mason's front yard, positioning itself for optimal situational awareness while maintaining an appearance of casual parking. Four men emerged, their movements revealing professional training beneath business casual attire. Chase himself cut an impressive figure. Tall, silver-haired, projecting authority earned through years of successful operations. His smile carried a practiced charm that had convinced countless communities to accept Shadow Creek's development initiatives. "Mr. Reynolds," Chase called out, voice carrying practiced warmth, "your reputation for agricultural innovation precedes you. I hope you'll forgive this unannounced visit, but I believe we have mutual interests to discuss." Mason stepped onto his porch, presenting the image of a simple rancher, while his trained eyes noted tactical positions, fields of fire, and potential cover. "Mr. Chase," he replied calmly, "your reputation precedes you as well, though perhaps not in the way you intend." Chase's smile remained steady, but his eyes sharpened with professional assessment. Through concealed observers, Mason tracked his security teams establishing perimeter coverage using standard military protocols. "Your ranching coordination programs have attracted significant attention," Chase continued, maintaining a casual tone while his teams completed systematic security sweeps. "Implementing data collection protocols," Marcus reported through their secure network. "Standard military intelligence gathering disguised as civilian surveillance. They're mapping our response patterns." Mason maintained a relaxed posture while noting how Chase's teams positioned themselves to control key approaches. Their professional training was excellent, but revealed tactical assumptions about rural operations. "We're prepared to make a very generous offer," Chase explained, gesturing to the valley's improved infrastructure. "Your expertise combined with our resources could transform regional agriculture, modern equipment, upgraded facilities, preferential market access, everything needed to maximize operational efficiency." Through carefully hidden observation points, Mason tracked more Shadow Creek vehicles, establishing position along access roads. Their deployment followed textbook security protocols while attempting to maintain civilian appearance. Tactical. Teams implementing standard containment procedures, Emma transmitted from her veterinary rounds. They're isolating potential response routes using infrastructure improvements as cover. Chase's presentation continued, each point revealing professional methodology beneath casual business proposals. "Our development initiative offers tremendous opportunities: automated systems, integrated operations, centralized coordination, everything modern agriculture requires for peak efficiency." Mason noted how his security teams maintained precise positioning while appearing to conduct routine property inspection. Their movements demonstrated tactical excellence while revealing operational patterns that could be anticipated. "Your community leadership has impressed our analysts," Chase added, studying his reactions with practiced expertise. "We're prepared to offer a partnership role in regional development. Your local knowledge combined with our systematic approach could yield exceptional results." Through their secure network, Mason received updates on Shadow Creek's expanding presence, additional teams establishing surveillance positions, communication systems implementing monitoring protocols, security units deploying under civilian cover, tactical resources positioning at key points, command elements coordinating systematic coverage. "Think of the possibilities," Chase continued, his presentation following professional engagement protocols. "Modernized operations, streamlined logistics, optimized resource allocation, a complete transformation of agricultural efficiency." Mason maintained a casual demeanor while noting how his teams executed standard military procedures: perimeter security disguised as property inspection, tactical positioning masked by civilian activities, communication protocols hidden in normal operations, command structure concealed within business hierarchy, resource deployment masked by routine movement. "Our initial analysis suggests tremendous potential," Chase explained. each point revealing systematic methodology. Your community coordination combined with our development framework could revolutionize regional agriculture. Through concealed observation points, Mason tracked his teams implementing standard security procedures while maintaining civilian appearance. Access control disguised as property boundaries, surveillance systems masked as agricultural monitoring, tactical positions concealed by normal activities, command operations hidden in business functions, resource allocation masked by routine operations. We're prepared to begin immediate implementation, Chase continued, his presentation following professional protocols. Modern equipment deployment, facility upgrades, infrastructure enhancement, everything needed for optimal agricultural efficiency. Mason noted how his security teams maintained tactical excellence while revealing operational patterns. Regular position changes disguised as routine movement, communication protocols hidden in normal activities, surveillance methods masked by civilian inspection, command structure concealed in business operations, resource deployment masked by standard procedures. Consider the advantages, Chase added, studying his responses with professional expertise. Centralized coordination, automated systems, integrated operations, a complete transformation of agricultural efficiency. Through their secure network, Mason received updates on expanding tactical presence, additional teams establishing containment positions, communication systems implementing control protocols, security units deploying systematic coverage, tactical resources positioning at key points, command elements coordinating operational control. The future of agriculture requires systematic modernization, Chase explained, each point revealing professional methodology. Your community leadership combined with our development framework could achieve exceptional results. Mason maintained a casual demeanor while noting how his teams executed standard procedures, perimeter control disguised as property inspection, tactical positioning masked by civilian activities, communication protocols hidden in normal operations, command structure concealed within business hierarchy, resource deployment marked by routine movement. Because Mason Reynolds understood the true advantage comes from recognizing how professional expertise reveals operational patterns. While Chase's teams implemented sophisticated procedures, they never realized they were showing their tactical methods to someone who'd learned that some communities resist systematic control through understanding that transcends standard military protocols. Your ranching methods are unconventional, Chase observed, his casual tone masking professional assessment. Our analysts note interesting patterns in your community coordination. Equipment sharing programs that create unusual movement patterns, cooperative schedules that establish unique coverage areas. Through their secure network, Marcus detected new electronic signatures. They're implementing advanced surveillance protocols, he reported. Directed microphones, thermal imaging, signal monitoring, military-grade intelligence gathering disguised as agricultural sensors. Mason maintained a thoughtful expression while noting how Chase's security teams adjusted positions based on his movements. Their tactical responses revealed standard military training adapted for civilian operations. Chief of Security arriving, Emma transmitted from her observation point. Michael Blackwood, former Force Recon Commander, specializes in territorial control through infrastructure manipulation. A fifth vehicle approached, its timing coordinated to appear random while following precise tactical protocols. Blackwood emerged, his athletic build and alert posture marking him as a professional operator despite his business attire. Our development framework offers significant advantages, Chase continued as Blackwood joined them, each word carefully chosen to gauge responses. Automated monitoring systems, integrated coordination networks, centralized resource management, everything needed for optimal efficiency. Through hidden observation points, Mason tracked Blackwood's subtle hand signals, directing his teams to implement standard security protocols. Enhanced perimeter control masked as property inspection, advanced surveillance disguised as environmental monitoring, tactical repositioning concealed by casual movement, command communications hidden in normal conversation, resource deployment masked by routine activities. Your community shows remarkable resilience, Blackwood added, his assessment following military intelligence protocols. Adapting to challenges through coordinated response, maintaining operational efficiency despite limited resources. Impressive. Capabilities. Mason noted how his presence changed the security team's behavior. Sharper movements, tighter coordination, enhanced tactical awareness while maintaining civilian appearance. Regional development requires systematic modernization, Chase explained, each proposal revealing operational methodology, upgraded infrastructure, enhanced monitoring systems, optimized resource allocation, a complete transformation of agricultural efficiency. Through their secure network, Mason received updates on expanded surveillance, signal intelligence teams deploying sophisticated equipment, thermal imaging systems establishing coverage patterns, electronic monitoring implementing tactical protocols, communication analysis revealing command structure, movement tracking disguised as agricultural monitoring. Consider the operational advantages, Blackwood continued, his presentation following professional assessment protocols. Integrated security systems, automated monitoring networks, centralized coordination, everything needed for optimal protection. Mason maintained casual interest while noting how their teams implemented military procedures, systematic coverage disguised as property evaluation, tactical positioning masked by business activities, communication protocols hidden in normal operations, command structure concealed within civilian hierarchy, resource deployment masked by routine procedures. Our analysis suggests tremendous potential, Chase added, studying reactions with practiced expertise. Your community organization combined with our systematic approach could achieve exceptional results. Through concealed sensors, Marcus detected new electronic signatures, advanced signal monitoring systems activating, thermal imaging establishing systematic coverage, communication analysis, implementing protocols, movement tracking systems, deploying coverage, data collection network, establishing patterns. Security considerations are paramount, Blackwood explained, each point revealing tactical methodology. Modern protection systems, integrated monitoring, coordinated response protocols, a complete transformation of operational security. Mason observed how their teams maintained professional discipline while revealing standard patterns, regular position adjustments following protocols, communication systems implementing procedures, surveillance methods maintaining coverage, command structure coordinating movements, resource allocation following patterns. The future demands adaptation, Chase continued, his words carrying practiced persuasion. Modernized operations, streamlined procedures, optimized efficiency, everything needed for agricultural advancement. Through their secure network, Emma reported expanded tactical presence, additional teams establishing systematic coverage, communication systems implementing protocols, security units deploying standard procedures, tactical resources positioning, following patterns, command elements coordinating operations. Technical assessment team approaching, Marcus transmitted through their encrypted channel. Dr. Victoria Chen, former defense research specialist, leads Shadow Creek's agricultural modernization programs. Her presence suggests escalating operational evaluation. A sixth vehicle arrived, its timing coordinated to appear random while following precise tactical protocols. Dr. Chen emerged, her professional demeanor masking years of military technology development experience. Your community's adaptation methods intrigue our research division, she began, a tablet displaying complex agricultural data. Coordinated resource allocation, synchronized operational patterns, integrated response protocols, fascinating efficiency, achievements despite limited technological infrastructure. Through concealed monitoring systems, Mason tracked new electronic signatures activated by Chen's arrival. Advanced agricultural sensors deploying, sophisticated analysis implementing, biological tracking systems establishing patterns, data, collection revealing operations, atmospheric sampling monitoring movements. The confrontation had shifted from assessment to active intelligence gathering. Each team member revealed their professional background through unconscious patterns, military precision masked by civilian courtesy, tactical deployment hidden within casual positioning, strategic evaluation concealed behind business proposals. Mason recognized the escalation. They weren't just gathering information, they were establishing a comprehensive profile of the community's capabilities, vulnerabilities, and potential resistance points. But their very thoroughness created exploitable patterns. Because true tactical advantage comes from understanding that professional expertise often blinds operators to unconventional responses. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented sophisticated procedures combining military and technical expertise, they never realized they were revealing their integrated methods to someone who'd learned that some communities resist systematic control. Through understanding that transcends standard operational protocols, sunset painted Thunder Valley in shades of crimson as Mason gathered his core team in the workshop's hidden command center. Rather than discussing their observations openly, each member uploaded data to Marcus's secure analysis system, building a comprehensive picture of the Shadow Creek gang's methodology pixel by pixel. The first dataset came from the valley's perimeter. Sensors, motion tracking algorithms identified 27 individual operatives beyond the 3 visible teams, their movements synchronized despite appearing random to casual observation. Thermal signatures revealed cached equipment at 12 different locations, each positioned to establish overlapping coverage while maintaining plausible agricultural purposes. Emma's veterinary rounds had provided perfect cover for mapping their surveillance network. Her tablet displayed an intricate web of modified agricultural sensors, each installation precisely placed to monitor key transit routes while appearing to serve legitimate farming purposes. The pattern suggested military-grade territorial control protocols adapted for long-term civilian occupation. "Look at this frequency analysis," Marcus whispered, his specialized equipment detecting layered communication networks hidden beneath. Normal agricultural data traffic. The Shadow Creek gang had established 5 redundant command channels, each disguised as legitimate farm operations. Irrigation monitoring, weather tracking, equipment telemetry, livestock management, and soil sampling. Tyler's combat experience recognized the underlying methodology in their infrastructure improvements. Every road modification channeled traffic past hidden observation points. Each bridge upgrade created potential control nodes, new power installations, established hardened command posts disguised as agricultural support facilities. The systematic nature of their approach exposed professional military planning. Rather than speculate about their intentions, Mason directed his team to focus on documenting verifiable patterns. Rebecca's engineering analysis revealed how their power grid modifications created a sophisticated control network masked by agricultural modernization. Samuel's mechanical expertise identified specialized vehicle modifications indicating preparation for extended operations. Dr. Turner's medical knowledge exposed how their health services strategy gathered comprehensive data about community vulnerabilities. The evidence mounted in silence as each team member contributed their findings to the secure database. Satellite imagery tracked their convoy's departure, revealing how each vehicle's route established secondary surveillance coverage while appearing to conduct normal business travel. Signal analysis exposed their communications architecture, multiple encrypted channels operating under civilian frequencies, command protocols hidden within agricultural data streams. Mason studied the tactical overlays without comment, recognizing patterns from his sniper operations. The Shadow Creek gang wasn't just planning a takeover. They were implementing a sophisticated occupation methodology refined through multiple operations. Each action served multiple purposes, carefully coordinated to establish dominance while maintaining plausible deniability. The analysis system correlated seemingly unrelated modifications into clear tactical patterns. Infrastructure improvements created a network of hardened positions disguised as agricultural facilities. Monitoring stations established forward observation posts masked as environmental sensors. Supply chain modifications implemented military-grade logistics tracking concealed as inventory management. Rather than discussing these findings openly, Mason had his team document their observations through encrypted channels. James's construction experience identified military engineering principles in their facility modifications. Elizabeth's educational background exposed how their community assessment mapped social networks for systematic manipulation. Michael's banking expertise revealed how their financial strategies targeted critical control points. The command center's displays painted a comprehensive picture of their methodology. Specialized equipment detecting unique electronic signatures from their research team's deployments, thermal imaging tracking their security team's final positions along the valley perimeter, satellite feeds monitoring their convoy's departure across state lines. Mason's military experience helped decode their strategic framework without needing to voice his conclusions. The Shadow Creek gang's approach demonstrated professional methodology, refined through multiple operations. Each element of their plan serves multiple purposes, carefully coordinated to establish systematic control while maintaining civilian appearance. The secure database compiled evidence of their tactical patterns automatically. Sensor deployments revealing systematic implementation of surveillance networks, distribution modifications exposing military-grade logistics protocols, facility designs demonstrating hardened structures masked as agricultural improvements. Rather than draw attention to their analysis, Mason had his team document everything electronically. The Shadow Creek gang's withdrawal maintained perfect operational security, while unknowingly demonstrating patterns that could be exploited. Each movement exposed assumptions about rural capabilities that created strategic opportunities. The command center systems correlated their observations silently. Environmental sampling stations establishing comprehensive monitoring networks. Supply chain modifications implementing controlled distribution protocols. Infrastructure improvements creating fortified positions disguised as agricultural modernization. Mason studied the accumulated data without comment, developing counter-strategies that would exploit their professional assumptions. The Shadow Creek gang's expertise had created sophisticated methodology, but their very professionalism revealed operational patterns that could be anticipated and countered through unconventional response. The analysis system compiled final observations. As their teams cleared the valley perimeter, their departure maintained perfect tactical discipline while revealing systematic patterns. Each movement demonstrated professional expertise but exposed critical vulnerabilities. Because true tactical advantage comes from understanding that professional methodology often reveals systematic patterns to informed observation. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented sophisticated procedures combining military and technical expertise, they never realized their operational methods were being catalogued by someone who'd learned that some communities Resist systematic control through understanding that transcends standard protocols. Through the workshop's carefully concealed observation points, Mason watched the last traces of sunlight fade from Thunder Valley. The Shadow Creek gang saw scattered ranches as unsophisticated targets, never suspecting that apparent rural simplicity masked a sophisticated resistance already analyzing their every move. Their assumption that professional military expertise guaranteed tactical superiority would prove to be their greatest vulnerability. The command center's displays dimmed automatically as darkness settled over the valley. Mason's team had accomplished their objective, documenting the Shadow Creek gang's methodology without revealing their own capabilities. Each pattern they'd identified would become a point of leverage, each assumption a strategic opportunity. The analysis system completed its final correlation as the last vehicle cleared the valley perimeter. Their professional expertise was impressive, but they'd unknowingly revealed their tactical framework to someone who understood that true advantage comes from seeing beyond surface appearances to recognize exploitable patterns. Because Mason Reynolds knew the most dangerous opponent isn't the one making obvious displays of force. It's the one patiently gathering intelligence, identifying patterns, and preparing to reveal capabilities that its enemies never suspected existed. The Shadow Creek gang's sophisticated methodology would become their greatest vulnerability, but only to those who understood how to transform professional assumptions into strategic advantages. Midnight transformed Thunder Valley, revealing capabilities carefully concealed from daylight observation. Mason's workshop, appearing dormant to surveillance, came alive with sophisticated countermeasures. Specialized equipment emerged from agricultural storage, each piece precisely modified for unconventional response. Behind carefully shielded doors, Mason accessed his private armory. Custom rifles occupied dedicated racks, each weapon meticulously maintained and zeroed for specific ranges across the valley. The Macmillan TAC-338 that had served him in combat now guarded key approaches, supported by a collection of specialized optics and range-finding equipment. Surveillance network activated, markers transmitted through their encrypted channel. Months of preparation had allowed them to establish their own monitoring system, hidden within normal farming operations. Motion sensors disguised as irrigation controls, thermal imaging concealed in livestock monitoring equipment, signal detection masked by weather stations. The command center's displays painted an invisible web across Thunder Valley. Every shadow. Creek surveillance position had been mapped and counted. Each observation post they established was itself being observed. Their sophisticated monitoring network now provided data directly to Mason's own analysis systems. Tyler emerged from the underground range, where specialized training sessions had prepared key community members for coordinated response. Local ranchers who appeared to simply maintain their properties had developed specific tactical capabilities, each skill carefully masked by normal agricultural activities. Response teams confirmed, he reported quietly. Years of shared military experience had allowed them to establish defensive positions throughout the valley, each location chosen to provide optimal coverage while maintaining complete deniability. Every improved road implemented by Shadow Creek now channeled movement past prepared countermeasures. Emma's veterinary practice provided perfect cover for distributing specialized equipment. Medical supplies, concealed communications gear, livestock vaccines, transported custom ammunition, routine checkups allowed for tactical coordination. Her normal rounds maintained constant awareness of Shadow Creek activities while appearing to conduct standard animal care. The workshop's secure planning room displayed satellite imagery of the valley's transformation. Where Shadow Creek saw vulnerable infrastructure, Mason had established interlocking fields of fire. Their improved roads created channelized movement corridors. New construction projects offered elevated firing positions. Power grid upgrades provided covered approaches. Confirmation from outlying stations, Marcus transmitted. Rebecca's engineering expertise had allowed them to tap into Shadow Creek's own monitoring systems. Their sophisticated surveillance network now fed false data, showing normal agricultural patterns while masking actual community activities. Dr. Turner's medical background facilitated another layer of preparation. The local clinic maintained supplies for treating potential casualties while appearing to stock standard veterinary materials. Regular health checks allowed for secure communication through encrypted medical records. Insurance documentation concealed. Tactical coordination. Mason studied the tactical display without comment. Shadow Creek's professional expertise had created exploitable patterns, each assumption about rural capabilities becoming a strategic opportunity. Their military methodology would prove vulnerable to unconventional response. James's construction experience enabled deployment of specialized equipment throughout the valley. Hardened storage appearing as normal agricultural buildings, reinforced positions masked by infrastructure improvements, concealed access routes disguised as irrigation channels. Every Shadow Creek modification now served dual purposes. The command center systems tracked their own preparations automatically. Defensive positions established through normal farming activities, communication networks hidden within agricultural operations, supply caches concealed by routine storage. Each capability is carefully masked by ordinary ranching practices. Elizabeth's educational role provided cover for training key personnel. Agricultural programs concealed tactical instruction. Equipment maintenance taught specialized skills. Youth development masked capability building. The next generation learned to integrate defense preparations with normal ranch operations. Through carefully positioned sensors, Mason monitored the valley's night activity. What appeared as routine agricultural monitoring masked a sophisticated defensive network. Every Shadow Creek surveillance position had been identified and counted, their own observation posts now providing early warning of unusual movement. Linda's supply cooperative facilitated distributed resource staging. Equipment parts concealed. Specialized tools, agricultural supplies, masked tactical gear, routine deliveries maintained logistics networks. Normal business operations provided constant resupply while avoiding attention. The workshop's displays tracked Shadow Creek's own activities automatically. Their professional security teams maintained standard protocols, never realizing their movements were being analyzed and counted. Each pattern they established created new opportunities for unconventional response. Samuel's mechanical expertise enabled deployment of specialized vehicles throughout the valley. Modified ranch trucks concealing tactical capabilities, agricultural equipment masking defensive features, routine transportation disguising rapid response options. Every Shadow Creek mobility advantage had been identified and matched. The command center's systems compiled capability assessments silently. Defensive positions established through farming improvements, communication networks hidden within agricultural operations, supply caches concealed by routine storage. Each preparation is carefully integrated with normal ranching activities. Through encrypted channels, Mason coordinated final preparations. The Shadow Creek gang's sophisticated methodology had revealed their tactical framework, allowing his team to establish countermeasures while maintaining complete deniability. Their professional assumptions about rural capabilities would prove to be their greatest vulnerability. Nathan's market management role enabled distributed intelligence gathering. Routine business transactions concealed information collection, vendor relationships masked coordination networks, normal commerce facilitated resource movement. Every Shadow Creek pressure point had been identified and prepared for. The workshop's secure planning room displayed their defensive framework automatically. What appeared as scattered agricultural operations masked an integrated response network. Each ranching activity concealed specific capabilities, carefully coordinated while maintaining normal appearances. Michael's banking experience facilitated financial preparations. Investment patterns concealed resource allocation, loan documentation, masked capability development, routine transactions enabled tactical support. Normal business operations provided constant readiness while avoiding attention through carefully concealed observation points. Mason monitored final deployment status. The Shadow Creek gang's professional expertise had created exploitable patterns, each assumption about rural capabilities becoming a strategic opportunity. Their military methodology would prove vulnerable to unconventional response. Maria's community role-enabled social network coordination. Cultural events concealed tactical planning, local gatherings masked capability sharing, routine activities facilitated defensive preparation. Every Shadow Creek attempt to map social connections now provided false data. The command center's displays tracked readiness levels automatically. Defensive positions established through normal farming activities, communication networks hidden. Within agricultural operations, supply caches concealed by routine storage. Each capability is carefully masked by ordinary ranching practices, because true tactical advantage comes from understanding that professional methodology often creates exploitable patterns. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented sophisticated procedures combining military and technical expertise, they never realized their operations were being countered by someone who'd learned that some communities resist systematic control through capabilities that transcend standard tactical assessment. Mason studied the accumulated data without comment. The Shadow Creek gang saw scattered ranches as unsophisticated targets, never suspecting that apparent rural simplicity masked a sophisticated resistance already prepared to counter their every move. Their assumption that professional military expertise guaranteed tactical superiority would prove to be their greatest vulnerability. The workshop's displays dimmed automatically as preparations reached final stages. Mason's team had established comprehensive countermeasures without revealing their capabilities. Each pattern they'd identified had become a point of leverage, each assumption a strategic opportunity. A sudden alert from the perimeter sensors drew Mason's attention. Through thermal imaging, a lone figure approached the workshop. Hannah Parker, the local librarian whose role provided unique advantages in their preparations. Her archive of historical documents contained crucial tactical information masked as agricultural records. The deed records revealed something interesting, she reported, spreading century-old maps across the planning table. The original Valley Survey from 1892 shows a network of caves and underground waterways. Shadow Creek's geological scanning missed them completely. They're looking for modern infrastructure, not natural features. Mason studied the yellowed documents with intense focus. The caves provided natural concealment for equipment caches, while the waterways offered hidden movement routes beneath Shadow Creek's sophisticated surveillance network. Their advanced technology had overlooked the valley's most valuable defensive assets. The Historical Society's renovation project provided perfect cover, Hannah continued. We've mapped the entire underground system while appearing to conduct routine historical preservation. Every access point has been catalogued and prepared, but the records show only standard archaeological documentation. Through secured channels, Tom Foster transmitted confirmation of another capability. His electrical contracting business had allowed them to establish a backup power grid disguised as agricultural infrastructure. If Shadow Creek attempted to control the valley through utility manipulation, key facilities could switch to independent systems without revealing their preparation. The midnight planning session revealed additional layers of readiness. Rachel Martinez's position as agriculture teacher enabled distribution of specialized communication equipment masked as educational materials. Student projects in radio operation and electronics provided cover for establishing secure networks throughout the valley. Diana Wilson's role managing livestock auctions facilitated another form of preparation. Regular sales events allowed for discreet movement of supplies and equipment, while auction documentation concealed tactical coordination. Every transaction appeared as normal commerce while supporting defensive readiness. Mason's command center tracked these capabilities automatically, each system carefully integrated with normal valley operations. Shadow Creek's sophisticated monitoring would detect only routine agricultural activities, while actual preparations remained invisible to their surveillance. Sarah Reynolds, whose legal practice specialized in agricultural contracts, had established another layer of protection. Property agreements included carefully worded clauses preserving access rights and water usage, creating a legal framework that would resist Shadow Creek's attempts at infrastructure control. Through encrypted channels, Grace Henderson reported successful testing of their counter-surveillance measures. Her grain elevator operations provided elevated positions for monitoring Shadow Creek activities while seeming to conduct normal agricultural business. Every observation post they established was itself being observed through completely deniable means. The workshop's systems compiled capability assessments silently as midnight approached. Pastor Wright's community activities enabled secure information sharing masked as church functions. Amy Chen's veterinary supply business facilitated equipment distribution disguised as routine deliveries. Each preparation appeared as normal. Valley operations while serving tactical purposes. Mason's tactical display highlighted the effectiveness of their concealment. Shadow Creek's sophisticated analysis had documented only standard ranching activities, missing the defensive capabilities. Hidden beneath ordinary operations, their professional expertise had become a limitation, preventing them from recognizing preparations that didn't match military patterns. Through carefully positioned sensors, final confirmation arrived from outlying positions. Julia Martinez's role coordinating regional agricultural programs provided cover for establishing response teams throughout the area. Regular training events masked tactical preparation while maintaining completely normal appearances. The secure planning room's displays tracked readiness automatically as the last pieces fell into place. Laura Anderson's position managing water rights enabled control of key terrain features disguised as irrigation improvements. Mark Wilson's equipment repair business facilitated deployment of modified vehicles appearing as standard ranch trucks. Because true advantage comes from understanding that professional methodology creates predictable limitations. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented sophisticated procedures based on military expertise, they never realized their advanced capabilities were being systematically countered by preparations that transcended standard tactical assessment. Mason studied the accumulated data with quiet satisfaction. The Shadow Creek gang saw only scattered agricultural operations, never suspecting that apparent rural simplicity masked a sophisticated resistance prepared to counter their every move. Their assumption that advanced technology guaranteed superiority would prove to be their critical weakness. Through the workshop's carefully concealed observation points, Mason watched thermal signatures of normal nighttime ranch activities. Each routine movement masked specific capabilities. Every ordinary task concealed tactical preparation. Shadow Creek's professional assessment had documented only what they expected to see, missing the defensive network hidden within standard agricultural operations. The command center's displays tracked final deployment status automatically. Years of Patient preparation had created a comprehensive response framework, completely invisible to sophisticated surveillance. Each ranching activity concealed specific capabilities, carefully coordinated while maintaining normal appearances. Because Mason Reynolds understood that true tactical advantage comes from recognizing how professional expertise often prevents operators from seeing beyond their training. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented advanced procedures refined through military experience, they never realized their sophisticated methodology was being countered by capabilities that transcended standard assessment protocols. Thunder Valley stirred awake at 4:47 a.m. as perimeter sensors registered multiple intrusions. 8 unmarked vehicles crossed the northern boundary, their engines barely audible above the pre-dawn wind. Mason watched his workshops display silently as encrypted. Alerts illuminated defensive positions across the digital map. No alarm sounded. There was no need. The valley's response network had been waiting for this moment. Marcus's voice whispered through a secured channel disguised as irrigation telemetry. High-end thermal camo, frequency-hopping comms, ECM gear in the lead vehicle. They're good. A pause. But they're following textbook search protocols, grid pattern 500-meter spacing, standardized observation points. Mason's fingers danced across his control panel, activating predetermined countermeasures. Across the valley, normal morning activities began slightly earlier than usual. Ranch hands started their rounds. Delivery trucks warmed up. Livestock shifted between pastures. Each movement is precisely timed and positioned to mask defensive responses while appearing completely random. At the Henderson grain elevator, motion sensors tracked a Shadow Creek team setting up sophisticated scanning equipment. Their ground-penetrating radar swept methodically across the property, searching for hidden bunkers or ammunition caches. The centuries-old cave network beneath their feet remained invisible, its irregular limestone formations scattering their sensor beams into useless static. Emma's white veterinary truck bounced along its morning route, her radio transmitting coded observations between actual patient updates. Mobile command post established at Junction 23. They're running electronic surveillance, but the valley's natural magnetic anomalies are playing havoc with their detection gear. Through his tactical display, Mason watched Shadow Creek's search pattern expand. Their teams moved with clockwork precision, each position carefully chosen for optimal coverage. They were executing a perfect tactical sweep and completely missing everything that mattered. Their sophisticated equipment searched for reinforced bunkers, while farm sheds concealed observation posts. Their thermal cameras sought hidden guard positions, while normal ranch hands conducted counter-surveillance. Their signal detectors hunted for military-grade communications, while encrypted data flowed through ordinary agricultural monitoring systems. Tyler's voice crackled through a channel masked as livestock tracking data. Search Team Alpha just spent 20 minutes scanning the old Peterson barn. Their ground radar found exactly what we wanted them to find: some abandoned farming equipment and a whole lot of nothing. A soft chuckle. They didn't even glance at the grain silo next door with the actual observation post. Rebecca's engineering crew continued routine maintenance on the valley's power grid, each repair vehicle positioned to monitor Shadow Creek's movements. Their work orders contained detailed surveillance reports hidden within normal technical documentation. Every defensive position reported status through channels that appeared as standard infrastructure data. Mason's display tracked the search team's growing frustration. Their sophisticated sensors found nothing matching military threat profiles. Their tactical analysis discovered no suspicious patterns. Their signals intelligence detected no unauthorized communications. The valley appeared exactly as it should, a collection of ordinary ranchers going about their daily business. By mid-morning, Shadow Creek's methodical sweep had covered 40% of the valley. Their teams maintained perfect operational security. while unknowingly revealing their own patterns and capabilities. Each position they established was noted, each piece of equipment identified, each procedure documented. The hunters had become the hunted, though they showed no sign of realizing it. James's construction crews poured concrete for a new livestock barn, the site offering clear views of 3 Shadow Creek observation posts. Linda's supply trucks made deliveries along carefully planned routes, each stop allowing assessment of enemy positions. Samuel's mobile repair unit tracked vehicle movements while appearing to conduct routine equipment maintenance. The search team's frustration began showing in subtle ways: longer stops at observation points, repeated sensor sweeps of promising locations, increasing chatter on their supposedly secure communications channels. They were looking for a military-style defensive network and finding nothing but normal agricultural activity. Their own expertise had become a blindfold, preventing them from seeing the truth hidden in plain sight. At noon, Shadow Creek's mobile command post requested reinforcements. 2 additional surveillance vehicles entered the valley, carrying even more sophisticated detection equipment. Mason allowed himself a small smile as his display showed them deploying million-dollar sensor systems that would be defeated by 100-year-old geology and simple agricultural operations. The afternoon brought a change in Shadow Creek's tactics. Their teams began focusing on specific targets: storage facilities, equipment barns, repair shops. Each location was subjected to intense scrutiny, multiple types of sensors deployed to penetrate their secrets. They found exactly what Thunder Valley wanted them to find: ordinary buildings serving ordinary purposes. By sunset, Shadow Creek's search teams had covered 80% of the valley, while discovering absolutely nothing suspicious. Their sophisticated equipment had documented normal ranching operations in exhaustive detail. Their tactical analysis had identified standard agricultural patterns. Their signals intelligence had tracked ordinary civilian communications. Everything appeared exactly as it should. Mason watched the frustrated search teams withdraw as darkness fell. Their vehicles maintained perfect tactical spacing, their equipment gathered comprehensive data, their operators followed professional protocols. They would file detailed reports documenting Thunder Valley's complete lack of defensive preparations or suspicious capabilities, because they had fallen into the oldest trap in warfare, seeing what they expected to see. Their sophisticated technology sought military-style defenses, while ordinary ranch activities masked a comprehensive resistance network. Their professional expertise recognized only traditional threats, leaving them blind to unconventional preparations. Their tactical doctrine required them to find something that didn't exist, while completely missing what was actually there. Through his command center's displays, Mason tracked Shadow Creek's departure. Their search had been perfect by military standards: methodical, thorough, professional, and entirely useless. Thunder Valley's defensive network remained invisible, its capabilities hidden within the ordinary rhythms of rural life. The enemy's own assumptions had defeated them more thoroughly than any weapon could have. As night settled over the valley, normal activities continued unchanged. Ranch hands completed their evening chores, livestock settled into their pastures. Equipment was maintained and stored, and beneath this peaceful surface, Thunder Valley's invisible resistance network stood ready, its capabilities masked by the very simplicity that Shadow Creek's experts had dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. Failure changed Shadow Creek's approach fundamentally. A week after their fruitless search, they shifted from observation to action. The transformation began subtly, a series of minor accidents and equipment failures at properties resisting their development initiatives. A broken irrigation pump here, a failed generator there, each incident appearing random while following a calculated pattern. Mason tracked these changes through his command center's analysis system. The display highlighted affected properties in red, forming a clear strategic pattern. Shadow Creek wasn't striking randomly. They were systematically isolating resistant ranches while demonstrating the benefits of cooperation to those still undecided. Thompson's Northwell failed last night, Emma reported through their secure network. Her morning rounds provided perfect coverage of developing situations. Pump electronics are completely fried. Same damage pattern as the Henderson place last week. They're targeting water infrastructure first. The tactical display showed Thompson's property at the center of a carefully planned sequence. His well supplied water to 3 neighboring ranches. Its failure would pressure multiple families while appearing as simple mechanical breakdown. Shadow Creek was implementing a sophisticated strategy of controlled pressure. Tyler's early patrol spotted their next move. 4 unmarked maintenance vehicles approached the valley's main power substation, their credentials perfect, their paperwork complete. "Standard utility crew setup," he transmitted, "but their equipment signatures match Shadow Creek's tactical teams. They're not here to repair anything." By noon, power fluctuations affected specific properties across the valley. Ranches that had accepted Shadow Creek's initiatives received stable service. Those resisting faced intermittent outages, each disruption carefully timed to impact critical operations while maintaining plausible deniability. Marcus detected their electronic warfare capabilities hidden beneath routine maintenance. They've installed sophisticated signal jamming equipment disguised as noise filters, selective frequency targeting, focused interference patterns. They can disrupt communications for specific properties while leaving cooperative ranches untouched. The pressure expanded systematically. Linda's supply cooperative reported unusual shipping delays affecting resistant ranches. Samuel's repair service faced parts shortages for specific equipment models. Regular deliveries encountered random inspection delays. Each incident appeared unconnected while forming a clear pattern of coordinated pressure. They're implementing financial leverage, Michael transmitted through encrypted channels. His banking position revealed their economic strategy. Credit. Lines restricted, loan terms adjusted, insurance rates modified. Everything is perfectly legal while creating targeted pressure on resistant properties. Mason studied the tactical display as Shadow Creek's pattern emerged. They weren't just attacking infrastructure, they were systematically dismantling the community's support networks. Each pressure point was carefully chosen to create maximum impact while maintaining complete deniability. Rebecca's engineering assessment exposed their technical sophistication. The power fluctuations weren't random. They followed precise patterns, designed to damage sensitive equipment without leaving evidence. Water pressure changes stress specific pipe sections. Communication disruptions targeted crucial systems. Every accident served multiple purposes while appearing entirely natural. The afternoon brought escalation. Grace's grain elevator faced surprise safety inspections that delayed critical shipments. James's construction projects encountered permit complications. Dr. Turner's medical supplies were held up by paperwork issues. Shadow Creek was implementing a comprehensive strategy of systematic isolation. Through secured observation posts, Mason tracked their tactical team's movements. They maintained perfect operational security while executing precisely planned strikes. Each action appeared legitimate while serving their broader strategy of controlled pressure and systemic disruption. Hannah's historical research revealed the deeper pattern. Shadow Creek had refined this methodology through multiple operations. Their approach demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of rural communities' vulnerabilities. They weren't just attacking infrastructure. They were systematically exploiting complex dependencies to create irresistible pressure for compliance. They're targeting next-generation opportunities, Elizabeth reported through encrypted channels. Her position in education exposed their long-term strategy. Scholarship programs, internship offers, training initiatives, all exclusively available to families accepting their development program. They're using future prospects as leverage against parents. Mason's tactical display highlighted the psychological aspects of their approach. Shadow Creek wasn't just creating physical pressure, they were systematically generating community divisions. Each family faced impossible choices between resistance and children's opportunities. Every incident forced people to choose between short-term hardship and long-term prospects. Sarah's legal expertise revealed the sophistication of their methodology. All actions fell within regulatory frameworks while creating targeted disruption. Insurance claims faced selective delays. Permit applications encountered specific complications. Every pressure point was carefully chosen to maintain plausible deniability while maximizing impact. The evening brought reports of escalating tactics. Julia's medical practice faced licensing reviews affecting specific treatment options. Nathan's market encountered selective health code inspections. Maria's community events experienced permit complications. Shadow Creek was systematically isolating resistant properties while demonstrating the benefits of cooperation. Through carefully positioned sensors, Mason monitored their tactical team's deployment. Each strike followed precise protocols while appearing completely random. Infrastructure failures affected specific targets. Supply disruptions impacted resistant ranches. Communication problems isolated particular properties. Every action served multiple purposes while maintaining perfect deniability. Laura's water management position exposed their resource control strategy. Flow rates changed at crucial times. Pressure fluctuated during critical operations. Supply quality varied for specific properties. Shadow Creek was implementing sophisticated infrastructure manipulation while creating apparently natural disruptions. The tactical display tracked their systematic progression across the valley. Amy's veterinary supplies faced selective delivery delays. Diana's livestock sales encountered specific complications. Rachel's agricultural programs experienced targeted disruptions. Each incident appeared unconnected while forming clear patterns of coordinated pressure. Pastor Wright's community connections revealed the social impact of their strategy. Shadow Creek wasn't just attacking physical infrastructure. They were systematically straining relationship networks. Each disruption forced difficult choices between cooperation and community loyalty. Every incident created divisions between resistant and compliant properties. As darkness fell, Mason's command center compiled the day's patterns. Shadow Creek had implemented a sophisticated strategy of systematic pressure while maintaining perfect deniability. Their actions demonstrated professional expertise in rural community vulnerabilities. Each strike served multiple purposes while appearing completely natural. Mark's equipment repair service detected their technical methodology. Failures followed specific patterns. Breakdowns affected particular systems. Malfunctions targeted crucial operations. Shadow Creek was implementing coordinated infrastructure disruption while creating apparently random problems. The tactical display highlighted their psychological approach. Tom's electrical contracting revealed selective service patterns. Andy's fuel deliveries encountered specific delays. Jennifer's veterinary practice faced targeted supply issues. Each disruption forced choices between resistance and operational necessity, because professional expertise often reveals itself through systematic patterns. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented sophisticated pressure tactics refined through multiple operations, they never realized their calculated methodology exposed their intentions to informed observation. Their very precision created recognizable patterns that could be anticipated and countered. Mason studied the accumulated data as night settled over Thunder Valley. Shadow Creek's coordinated pressure demonstrated professional understanding of rural vulnerabilities. but their systematic approach revealed their tactical framework to those prepared to recognize it. Their assumption that calculated pressure guaranteed compliance would prove to be their critical weakness. Thunder Valley's response emerged like a pre-dawn mist, subtle, pervasive, impossible to grasp. Mason activated countermeasures that had waited silently for months, each element carefully prepared to exploit Shadow Creek's own tactics against them. The valley's ancient cave network became crucial infrastructure. Underground passages bypassed compromised delivery routes, allowing supplies to flow freely despite Shadow Creek's systematic disruption. Equipment cached in limestone chambers provided backup systems for targeted properties. Natural water flows supplied isolated ranches through hidden channels. Rerouting power through the secondary grid, Marcus transmitted from his concealed control station. Years of careful preparation had created redundant systems masked as agricultural infrastructure. When Shadow Creek cut power to resistant properties, backup networks activated automatically without revealing their existence. Mason's command center tracked their countermeasures through encrypted displays. Thompson's failed well-triggered activation of underground water systems installed during routine maintenance. Henderson's communications disruption shifted automatically to backup channels hidden within normal agricultural monitoring. Emma's veterinary rounds now carried crucial supplies, along with medical equipment. Her normal patient visits maintained vital connections between isolated properties while appearing as standard animal care. Shadow Creek's sophisticated surveillance detected nothing unusual about increased veterinary activity during a period of infrastructure stress. Implementation proceeding according to Contingency Plan Delta, Tyler confirmed, through secured channels. His fence repair operations provided cover for activating pre-positioned equipment caches. Essential machinery emerged from underground storage, each piece carefully maintained and ready for deployment. The tactical display showed Shadow Creek's growing confusion. Their calculated pressure achieved minimal impact as affected properties maintained normal operations through invisible support networks. Each attempt at systematic disruption encountered prepared countermeasures that appeared completely natural. Rebecca's engineering work concealed sophisticated responses. When power fluctuations targeted sensitive equipment, protected circuits activated automatically. Water pressure changes triggered hidden bypass systems. Communication disruptions encountered redundant networks masked as agricultural monitoring. Financial countermeasures online, Michael reported through encrypted channels. His banking position enabled activation of prepaid credit lines hidden within normal agricultural loans. When Shadow Creek restricted financing for resistant properties, alternative funding flowed through carefully concealed channels. Mason studied the tactical display as their response network expanded. Grace's grain elevator maintained operations through underground loading systems installed during routine maintenance. James's construction projects continued using cached materials and equipment. Dr. Turner's medical supplies flowed through alternate distribution networks hidden within normal deliveries. Linda's supply cooperative implemented prepared contingencies. When Shadow Creek disrupted standard deliveries, essential materials moved through secondary channels, masked as routine agricultural shipments. Samuel's repair service activated cached parts supplies concealed within normal inventory. Through secured observation posts, Mason monitored Shadow Creek's mounting frustration. Their systematic pressure achieved minimal results as affected properties maintained normal activities through invisible support networks. Each calculated disruption encountered prepared responses that appeared entirely natural. Hannah's historical society activities concealed crucial coordination. Regular tours provided cover for communication between isolated properties. Community gatherings masked tactical planning sessions. Every social event served multiple purposes while maintaining perfect deniability. Educational initiatives proceeding as planned, Elizabeth transmitted through secured channels. Her school programs now included practical training masked as agricultural education. Students learned essential skills disguised as normal coursework. Future opportunities developed through carefully concealed community networks. The tactical display tracked Shadow Creek's increasing pressure. Sarah's legal office activated prepared responses hidden within standard contracts. Julia's medical practice implemented alternate treatment options concealed by normal procedures. Nathan's market maintained operations through secondary supply. Networks masked as routine deliveries. Maria's community events provided perfect cover for coordination. Regular gatherings allowed secure communication between isolated properties. Social activities masked tactical planning. Every function served multiple purposes while appearing completely normal. Through carefully positioned sensors, Mason monitored their countermeasures' effectiveness. Laura's water management activated hidden distribution networks installed during routine maintenance. Amy's veterinary supplies flowed through alternate channels concealed within normal deliveries. Diana's livestock operations maintained crucial connections through prepared contingencies. Rachel's agricultural programs provided essential training masked as normal education. Pastor Wright's community activities enabled secure coordination disguised as social functions. Mark's equipment repairs activated cached resources hidden within standard inventory. The command center's displays tracked their systematic response. Tom's electrical work concealed activation of redundant systems. Jennifer's veterinary practice maintained vital connections between isolated properties. Andy's fuel deliveries continued through secondary networks, masked as routine operations. Mason's tactical analysis revealed the effectiveness of their preparation. Shadow Creek's sophisticated pressure encountered coordinated resistance hidden within normal agricultural activities. Each calculated disruption failed to achieve intended impact as affected properties maintained operations through invisible support networks. Because true advantage comes from understanding how systematic pressure creates exploitable patterns. While Shadow Creek's teams implemented sophisticated disruption tactics refined through multiple operations, they never realized their calculated methodology enabled prepared responses hidden within normal activities. Through encrypted channels, Mason monitored their countermeasures' expansion. Shadow Creek's pressure achieved minimal results as affected properties maintained normal operations through invisible support networks. Each disruption encountered prepared responses that appeared entirely natural. The tactical display showed growing confusion among Shadow Creek's teams. Their calculated pressure failed to create intended impact as targeted properties continued normal activities through hidden support systems. Each systematic disruption encountered coordinated resistance concealed within ordinary agricultural operations. Because Mason Reynolds understood that true tactical advantage comes from transforming apparent vulnerability into unexpected strength. While Shadow Creek implemented sophisticated pressure tactics refined through professional expertise, they never realized their calculated methodology enabled prepared responses hidden within normal community activities. Mason leaned back in his chair, the glow of the tactical display illuminating his focused expression. Shadow Creek's methodology was formidable, but their reliance on precision and pattern was ultimately their greatest weakness. They assumed rural communities lacked the organizational infrastructure to resist such calculated disruption. What they hadn't accounted for was Thunder Valley's deep-rooted resilience. Across the valley, prearranged contingencies activated in seamless succession. Each element of the counteroffensive had been carefully integrated into the daily lives of the residents, ensuring no obvious signs of resistance surfaced. While Shadow Creek believed they were steadily tightening their grip, Thunder Valley was methodically slipping through their fingers. Phase 2 is a go. Mason transmitted through a secure channel. Maintain deniability. Proceed as scheduled. The Valley's response escalated subtly. Sarah's legal expertise was deployed to counteract the administrative obstacles imposed by Shadow Creek. Delayed permits were challenged through obscure legal provisions, tying up Shadow Creek's regulatory maneuvers in bureaucratic knots. Insurance claims, once selectively hindered, now faced relentless scrutiny from a legal team well-versed in administrative warfare. Julia's medical practice adjusted its strategies. Licensing reviews were met with impeccable compliance documentation, supplemented by external professional audits that made any challenge appear baseless. Meanwhile, alternative medical resources sourced through discreet partnerships ensured uninterrupted patient care despite supply chain disruptions. Nathan's Market fortified its position by leveraging direct trade agreements with independent suppliers. With health code inspections becoming increasingly selective, every transaction was recorded with meticulous detail, making it impossible for regulators to fabricate violations without exposing their own inconsistencies. Maria's community events adapted as well. Social gatherings transitioned into decentralized meetups, each location chosen to avoid regulatory interference while maximizing cohesion among residents. The community's bonds, far from breaking, were strengthening under pressure. Through his sensor network, Mason monitored Shadow Creek's tactical shifts. Infrastructure disruptions persisted, but each setback was met with an elegant counterbalance. When power outages struck targeted properties, decentralized solar arrays and backup generators seamlessly filled the void. Selective supply chain interference met an unyielding web of cooperative distribution networks. Communications blackouts were mitigated by prearranged ham radio relays and satellite links disguised as agricultural weather tracking systems. They're adjusting, Marcus noted from his concealed operations hub. Tactics are shifting, more aggressive, less precision. They're starting to grasp that their expected results aren't materializing. Mason nodded. That's the first sign of desperation. Maintain course. We keep them chasing ghosts. Rebecca's engineering teams took their work a step further. By subtly modifying key infrastructure points, they ensured that Shadow Creek's tampering resulted in increasingly unpredictable consequences. Sometimes nothing at all, sometimes cascading failures in entirely different sectors. The unpredictability eroded Shadow Creek's operational confidence, forcing them to expend more resources investigating their own failures. Meanwhile, financial countermeasures continued. Michael's prearranged credit lines remained operational, but now they began to exert pressure in return. Select investments subtly influenced the local economic landscape, rerouting revenue streams away from Shadow Creek-affiliated businesses and reinforcing community-owned enterprises. The financial tide began to turn. Linda's cooperative expanded its reach. Supply chain disruptions were met with alternative sourcing from unexpected avenues. Equipment shortages were countered by a network of concealed storage caches, each release timed to appear as if it was a routine resupply rather than an act of resistance. Thunder Valley's countermeasures grew increasingly sophisticated. Shadow Creek's every move was observed, analyzed, and neutralized before it could inflict lasting damage. And as their frustration mounted, their responses became increasingly reckless. They're pushing harder, Hannah reported. Less precision, more brute force. They're losing patience. Mason exhaled slowly. Then we let them overextend. Keep everything looking like natural adaptation, not coordinated resistance. The moment they think we're reacting instead of planning, they'll make a mistake. Across Thunder Valley, operations continued seamlessly. Educational programs reinforced essential skills under the guise of agricultural training. Social events, Sustained lines of communication while appearing perfectly ordinary. Livestock operations, crop cycles, and infrastructure maintenance all persisted as if Shadow Creek's pressure was a minor inconvenience rather than an existential threat. Shadow Creek had underestimated Thunder Valley. They saw an isolated community, fragmented and vulnerable. They had failed to see the deep networks of mutual support, the unspoken understandings, and the quiet determination that ran through every resident's veins. As the first hints of dawn crept over the valley, Mason watched the tactical display with a quiet certainty. The battle for Thunder Valley was far from over, but the momentum was shifting. Shadow Creek had assumed they were the architects of an inevitable collapse. Instead, they were finding themselves ensnared in a conflict they no longer controlled, and, for the first time, they were beginning to realize it. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe. And turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.